When bombs turned cities into craters and shockwaves ripped through concrete like paper, one tiny handmade shelter refused to die. It didn't crack, it didn't flood, it didn't cave in when the ground shook, built by soldiers using nothing but dirt, wax, and cloth. This forgotten World War II shelter quietly stood its ground while steel bunkers buckled and timber huts vanished into smoke. No blueprints, no fancy equipment, just smart design and survival instinct. And the best part? The same method still works today. For pennies. During the height of World War II, air raid sirens meant one thing: find cover fast. Britain had its Anderson shelters, half-buried corrugated steel bunkers covered with earth. Across Europe, civilians dug into gardens and fields, creating makeshift dugouts. But most of these weren't built for the long haul. They flooded, leaked, and shook apart when heavy bombs hit nearby. Yet among frontline engineers and field soldiers, a different kind of shelter quietly emerged. It didn't have a government-issued name. It wasn't in the manuals. It was born out of necessity on bomb-scarred fields where survival meant improvisation. Soldiers started layering natural and scavenged materials, earth, cloth, wax, to create a structure that could take a beating from explosions and still stand the next morning. This wasn't the shelter you'd see in propaganda posters. It was the kind you built when no one was watching and the sky was falling apart. You know, at first glance it looked like just a simple dugout, but it was what went into those walls that really made the difference. So, let's start with the earth. Packed soil isn't just dirt, it's nature's armor, you see. When a bomb explodes, shockwaves move through the air really fast but, lose strength the moment they hit dense material. That's why underground shelters have always been lifesavers. The soldiers dug deep enough to let the ground itself absorb the pressure before it reached them. Next came the inner layer, a lining of heavy canvas, or cloth. Soldiers used what they had: old tent canvas, blankets, even sections of worn uniforms stitched together. This soft layer caught falling debris, held back loose soil, and made the cramped space livable. It also acted like a flexible skin that could move with the blast instead of snapping under pressure. Then came the real innovation, the wax. Soldiers melted wax, grease, or tar and brushed or spread it between the cloth and the outer earth. The result was a watertight seal that turned a damp hole into a dry, insulated haven. That thin layer of wax was a game-changer. It stopped rain from seeping in, kept the air warmer, and strengthened the wall by locking the materials together. 3 layers: dirt, wax, and cloth. Simple, tough, effective. It was a soldier's engineering miracle made from what others might call scrap. Bomb storms weren't just about explosions. They were about pressure. When a bomb hit, the air didn't just blow outward, it slammed into everything nearby, including the ground. Most shelters either cracked or shifted because they tried to resist the blast head-on. This one didn't. It flexed. The outer dirt absorbed and spread the impact. The wax kept the wall sealed and stable. The cloth inside gave it room to move slightly under pressure, preventing collapse. In engineering terms, that's controlled flexibility, exactly what modern shock-absorbing materials are designed to do. But here, it was achieved with nothing but soil and soldiers' intuition. Field reports and accounts from engineers mention shelters that survived multiple raids with little damage while nearby structures were destroyed. The reason was simple: they weren't fighting nature's forces, they were working with them. That's the kind of subtle genius wartime innovation often hides. So, fast forward to now, and this forgotten design can still teach us something valuable. You can actually recreate this same shelter with just a weekend of work and some basic supplies. First, dig a pit about shoulder deep and, the length of your body. Then, use the excavated soil to build up thick sidewalls and a sloped roof line. Inside, go ahead and line the walls with any strong fabric you have. Old canvas, tarp, or even some heavy-duty cloth will do. Next, melt candle wax, or use any leftover paraffin, and then brush or pour it over the cloth layer before you add the outer soil back on. The wax, it basically acts like waterproof armor. After that, compact the dirt around it tightly, and finally, Cover the top with more packed soil or even some gravel for drainage. So, the result? Well, you get a small, solid, weatherproof shelter that can shrug off heavy rain, high winds, and even shock vibrations from nearby impacts. It's not really designed for modern warfare, but, honestly, it's perfect for teaching how wartime engineering and practical survival instincts still matter. It's a project anyone can try safely, and it really proves that simple ideas just never go out of style. So, why does this strange mix of dirt, wax, and cloth hold up so well? First, mass. Dense earth absorbs energy from blasts, converting dangerous overpressure into harmless ground vibration. That's why even a meter of soil can dramatically reduce shockwave force. Second, waterproofing. Wax forms a natural seal, keeping out moisture and preventing soil erosion. Unlike plastic sheeting, it bonds to fabric and doesn't tear under pressure. Third, flexibility. Cloth or canvas distributes stress evenly across the wall. Instead of a brittle, rigid structure that cracks, you get a living, breathing barrier that flexes and rebounds. Together, these create what modern engineers call a composite barrier, 3 materials doing 3 different jobs in perfect balance. It's primitive science, but it worked then and it still works now. There's something deeply human about this design. No factory, no blueprint, just people under fire, turning the ground beneath them into protection. It's a story of survival through simplicity, a reminder that strength isn't always about steel or concrete. Sometimes it's about understanding how nature wants to work. And there's a powerful lesson in that for today's world. When everything gets complicated, look for the simple physics behind it. The principles that saved soldiers in the 1940s, layering, mass, flexibility, and water resistance, are the same ones used in modern shelters, storm bunkers, and even military armor. For preppers, builders, or honestly anyone fascinated by forgotten wartime genius, this old design proves that brilliance doesn't have to come in a manual. It can come from the dirt under your boots and a little bit of clever thinking. The forgotten World War II shelter that survived bomb storms isn't just a historical curiosity, it's a symbol of human resilience. It shows what happens when necessity forces invention. While the war ended long ago, this design remains a quiet triumph of practical intelligence. Soldiers who built these shelters didn't have advanced tools, they had willpower, teamwork, and the understanding that even the humblest materials could stand up to chaos. So next time you hear stories about bunkers and bomb shelters, remember the one that didn't need concrete or steel to stand tall. It just needed 3 things: dirt, wax, and cloth, and the courage to build when the world was falling apart. If you love uncovering forgotten wartime ingenuity and real survival stories that history almost left behind, make sure to subscribe to the Forgotten War Fronts. Share this story with someone who appreciates smart, simple design that still inspires today. History's full of lessons like this, sometimes buried, but never gone.